Dr. Senator Rand Paul is slamming Fauci, saying that Fauci is lying about natural immunity because it foils his vaccination plan. Now, I think this is a trap. Let me explain. We're already seeing more and more vaccine mandates pop up. As per the story, Los Angeles has okayed one of the strictest vaccination mandates in the country, and we expect this to all get worse. Recently, I had some friends go to the store to pick up some food, and they were like, dude, the shelves were empty. Yeah, things are getting bad. But I need you to understand something as we read about what Rand Paul's saying and what's happening in Los Angeles. You've played tic-tac-toe before. I know you have. Well, how do you defeat your opponent in tic-tac-toe? You got to catch them off guard. Now, for adults, tic-tac-toe is not really a game you play because you can't win. For kids, well, you can trick your opponent by setting yourself up so that no matter which move they make, you will win. The same is true for Connect 4. How do you win Connect 4? You set it up so that you've got like 1, 2, 3, red circles. And if they make a move, no matter what move they make, you will be cleared to win because you'll get 4 diagonal or 4 across. The point is, you control where your opponent can go to guarantee your victory. A better example may be chess. When you're playing chess against someone who's unskilled, you'll make a move knowing exactly what moves they can make in response and having plans prepared for what they do in that event. So vaccine mandates. I don't believe vaccine mandates are the true goal of what's actually being implemented. I think it is just convenient for the establishment to enact social credit systems. They've got a crisis they will not let go to waste. Donald Trump spearheaded Operation Warp Speed. He rammed this through. I genuinely believe the vaccines are safe and effective. I think you're being all tricked about government policy issues, and this is what frustrates me. They want you to give in so they can enact social credit systems. That's why in New York, the vaccine mandate is not even just about the vaccine. It's about you showing your ID. You've got to show your actual ID, and they want a mobile app. Why? Here's what happens. Rand Paul, much respect. He's like the only politician I actually like, okay? I think he does a good job, but he's walking into a pit trap. Natural immunity. There's several studies saying natural immunity is better than vaccine immunity. Some are inconclusive, and that's typically what we're seeing. So there's Yahoo News, this big publication saying, there's actually some pretty prominent studies saying natural immunity is better. And they all basically conclude that natural immunity plus a vaccination is still the best. But if natural immunity is better, then many people are saying, if I've already caught COVID through no fault of my own because it happened, why should I need to go and get vaccinated when I already have better immunity? That's not even relevant, in my opinion, what's going on. And I think we are purposefully being misled by politicians who are exploiting a crisis, by people who don't understand the depravity. My friends, if your two options are, why are they lying about natural immunity? And there's a vaccine mandate. No matter what happens, the outcome will be social credit scores. So my response is, dude, if you want to take any kind of medication, just go talk to a doctor. I honestly don't know or don't care. I can't tell you what fasoprednisolone or whatever these medications are or what they mean because I'm not a doctor, nor a chemist, nor a pharmacist. And so no matter what I'm getting prescribed, for the most part, I'm just like, don't know what it is. I'll look up information on it. I'll check the background. I'll look for adverse effects and all that stuff. And that's along with the research I do, and then I'll talk to a doctor. And look, if you've got an infection or something, maybe you're walking through the forest and you bump into a pointy stick and you're like, oh no. And they're like, we're going to give you this, tetrahabenazole or whatever. You're going to be like, okay, here's what I think. They've got us so distracted about medications. Certainly there's a lot of money in it for big pharma that we're not actively discussing the policies enough. I know we're all saying no vaccine mandate, but when the conversation gets pulled back to natural immunity, what's going to happen is they're going to say, okay, fine, you win. You win. We'll allow people with natural immunity to not get the vaccine. And then everyone goes, yay, we won. And they say, pull out your app and give me your papers. And we go, okay. No, I'm not okay with that. That's the problem. The authoritarianism is the problem. Whether or not someone wants to get a medication isn't the issue, in my opinion. Whether natural immunity is better or worse is irrelevant because natural immunity as a factor in the debate still means mandates. And that's what we get. I don't think Fauci's, I don't think that many of these Democrats are sitting there, actually worried for the most part about vaccines. And I think it can be easily broken down. Joe Biden says we need, 98% of people to be vaccinated to get back to normal. Oh, please spare me. They keep lying. But more importantly, people in rural areas who don't encounter other people probably aren't going out and they're just staying at home for the most part. I was at a gas station in Wyoming. This dude was like 100 miles from civilization. I was driving through Wyoming a couple years ago, several years ago, like 4, and running out of gas. And there's just empty road. Cell phone's not working. And I'm just thinking to myself, wow, it was me and my friend, we're going to run out of gas because there's no gas stations. We can't get a map going. We don't know where what to look for. And then we see this little shack by the side of the road. And I don't even think twice. I'm just driving. And then all of a sudden my friend goes, it's a gas pump. And we're like, what? And then I slam the brakes on, turn around, and lo and behold, this rickety old gas pump. And I'm like, wow. We go inside and there's this old man watching Fox News. He's got a little dog and he's like, what can I do you for? And we're like, we need gas. And he's like, I got you. And we're like, oh, wow. Lucky. We had like 100 miles left and there was nothing in sight. And we were like, I think we maybe had like 70 miles. We were assuming. I don't know for sure. Anyway, my point is, this dude is not rushing out to shut down his store to drive 200 or 300 miles to get a vaccine. And so when they talk about 98%, they're saying what all of these people who live in the rural areas that don't interact all that much with other people are going to take time out of their workday. Yeah, probably not. So you're not going to get to the levels they claim you'll get to. Perhaps in cities that I understand, and New York does have a high vaccination rate. But they are enacting very severe mandates, and that is the real issue. If Joe Biden says even that guy needs to be vaccinated, I get it. I get why look, a lot of people, there's a viral video right now, and they're like, if the vaccine is protecting these people, then why should unvaccinated people, get the same protection if it's not protecting the other people? Like, you get the point. They're saying, how are unvaccinated people a risk to vaccinated people? You need to listen to the actual arguments that they're making. The argument that they're making is that if unvaccinated people are more likely to get the virus, it's more likely to result in higher rates of mutation, which could eventually like if you get a new variation of COVID, it could bypass the existing vaccines because they were designed, I think, for like alpha and beta strains. That's their argument. I understand that argument. I'm not going to mischaracterize their argument. I still think it's a rather silly argument in the big picture, but it's not like they're saying vaccines don't work. They're not saying that at all. In fact, they're saying they do work. And if everybody does get one, then you will, to the best of our abilities, slow down the rate of mutation. Regardless of any of that, I am sick of having an argument around medical science as if we're scientists. You know what we are? We, the people of a country that says that determines the amount of risk they're willing to take for their freedoms. In which case, make all the arguments in the world that you want. When it comes to COVID, I still say it's time to recognize what's happening. There's a food shortage. There is a labor shortage. There's a fuel shortage. Cargo ships. Everything is falling apart. It is collapsing. At a certain point, we have to do a cost-benefit analysis and say, how many people will starve around the world? What is the acceptable losses if we don't get back to work? And are we, as a country, going to allow the government to mandate our papers in any capacity? Now, when it comes to bars, you want to sit at the bar, you want to go into a bar, okay, you need an ID. I'm not even a big fan of that for the most part. I guess I think that drinking age at 21 is wrong. 18, if you're an adult, you're a legal adult, you can enter contracts, that's your own business. But when it comes to what's happening with vaccine mandates, please, we need to stop getting into the muck and the mire about medical issues that I don't care if someone gets the vaccine. I really don't. I'm not them. They're not me. No one should force anyone to do so. But more importantly, no one should be forced to undergo testing. No one should be forced to present their papers. And that's the issue I think is particularly important. And a big shout out for those that are watching on YouTube, Fox Business trying to auto refresh on me. Get out of here with that. Here's what's happening in Los Angeles. One of the strictest U.S. vaccination mandates. They say the city council voted 11-2 in favor of the ordinance that will require proof of full vaccination for patrons and workers starting November 4th. Quote from the mayor, vaccinating more Angelenos is our only way out of this pandemic, and we must do everything in our power to keep pushing those numbers up. These new rules will encourage more people to get the shot and make businesses safer for workers and customers so that we can save more lives. The move came after the city council postponed a vote last week to deal with concerns ranging from who could be fined for violations to whether employees could end up in fist fights when they had to serve as vaccine door monitors. Door monitors? Some critics charge that a mandate would amount to segregation for those who cannot or refuse to be vaccinated. Others call it unenforceable. This is one of the big issues I have with it. Segregation. Some people cannot get the vaccine. Period. Don't care, don't know why. It's none of my business. We cannot segregate them. We should not be forcing them to undergo a special circumstance. So what they're saying is, if you cannot get the vaccine for medical reasons, well, then you'll have to get a negative test every 3 days. Unacceptable. People shouldn't be forced to undergo testing because of a medical restriction. Imagine if they said everybody in a wheelchair must get a special blood test every 3 days. Otherwise, they're not allowed in buildings. I understand there's a difference between COVID and a disability. The point I'm making is regardless of what the disability is, you cannot restrict people because of it. If there is someone who has a severe case of, MS or something, and in this instance, their doctor says, no, I don't want you getting the vaccine because I know it happens, then are we going to then be okay with telling them they're subject to special rules and laws based on their medical ailment? I'm not a fan of this. They go on to say, the ordinance would require people to be fully vaccinated to enter indoor public spaces, including shopping malls, restaurants, bars, gyms, sports arenas, museums, spas, nail salons, indoor city facilities, and other locations. Current vaccine eligibility includes people aged 12 and up. Children under that age aren't yet eligible for the vaccine. Negative coronavirus tests within 72 hours of entry to those places would be required for people with religious or medical exemptions or vaccinations. Customers without proof can still use outdoor facilities and can briefly enter a business to use a restroom or pick up a food order. That's what I love about this. That should be the issue right there that shows you it's not about just the vaccine. In New York, performers are exempt. People ordering takeout and using bathrooms, exempt. Think about that for 2 seconds. You're a touring performer. You're a comedian and you travel around the country. Okay. You come into contact with substantially more people than the average person and all over the country. And you have no requirement for testing or vaccination or anything like that. That's New York. It doesn't make sense, does it? Now, what about this in Los Angeles? If you want to walk in for takeout, for a pickup food order, as if you can't spread COVID, as if you're not going to be sneezy or touching things, it doesn't make sense. What they're really saying is if you want to enjoy the amenities of public accommodation, do as you're told. I've said this before. I think they use vaccination specifically because most people don't care. They think it's fine. And vaccines are good things. So they've found a circumstance in which people are scared. They found something people overwhelmingly trust. And now they're saying, do these things or else. We're also including an ID mandate, and we're developing an app to track your information. Look at Australia. It's not about vaccine mandates. People are required to take selfies of themselves. Otherwise, the police will show up at their door. That's absolutely insane. It is authoritarianism. Now, with respect to Dr. Senator Rand Paul, I think he's a good dude. I think it is important to talk about natural immunity. But I feel like this is still within the confines of their debate, where they said the first presupposition is there will be and must be mandates. Following that, the question is, should there be exemptions for natural immunity or not? This argument is within their territory. We see this all the time with the left. The right always engages in the left's argument. Here's what the right should be arguing right now. Absolutely no requirements, no mandates, no lockdowns, nothing. Free and open everything, period. Absolutely no restrictions and no requirements. Why? Because then the compromise is something like, okay, we'll protect the elderly and make sure people are safe and encourage vaccination, but not mandate it. This is what the right does. Gun control is a really good example. The right says no gun control, even though there's already ridiculous amounts of laws in the books banning tons of weapons that the bans make no sense. Then the left says, okay, you guys are at no new laws. How about instead of doing the full ban every single gun imaginable, we'll just ban these handful of guns. And the Republicans say, that's a compromise. We'll ban those guns. And then we compromised. And then in 10 years, the Democrats come back and say, hey, so you guys don't want to ban any more guns, but how about we compromise? You see how it works. The Republicans need to come out and say, our position is to repeal all gun bans. to pass a federal law repealing to repeal the NFA, National Firearms Act, and another law that says states have no authority to infringe upon the right of any of their citizens to keep and bear arms. Any arm for any reason. That's what they need to do. You know why? As much as I would enjoy that, what'll really happen is the Democrats will come back and say that's insane. At the very least, you have to ban, nuclear missiles and cruise missiles. And the Republicans can respond with, that's absurd. Nobody has those things. So fine, we'll give you that one. And then, oh no, you can't own a cruise missile. Sure, I'm not really worried about that all that much. Although there is an argument that it still counts as arms. And if people could own cannons and privateers, maybe we shouldn't even let that happen. But at the very least, if Republicans were actually pulling back, the Democrats would be forced to compromise in their positions, which they aren't, and they don't. Mitch McConnell, Turtle Man, for some reason keeps getting elected. Now he's telling the Democrats, I'm going to go along with what you say on the debt ceiling because I'm a pathetic loser. And that's what he's doing. And you get people who just keep voting for the guy. Primary, these people, my friends. The Uniparty doesn't like you. They don't care about you. They think you are stupid, and they want to rule over you. Because they can't imagine living in a world where the rabble have a say. But you know what the world is like when you don't have a say? You can look at the Dark Ages. You can look at the Soviet Union. You can look at Venezuela. When you have no say, you will live in squalor. And the wealthy elites will extract whatever they can. We have to understand the game of chess being played. They start the debate with, and they try and create only two outcomes. It's the big ask. By the time this debate is over, what's going to happen? We will have social credit systems. Now, with that all being said, there is still a light here at the end of the tunnel. The Daily Mail reports vaccine experts advise the White House to abandon its plan to provide COVID booster shots to all Americans in yet another setback for the Biden administration rollout. We have to be careful that when they go too far with authoritarianism, we don't celebrate them going only slightly less far. We were talking about Stuart Scheller, Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Scheller. He's the guy who spoke up about Afghanistan, demanding accountability from military leaders. He was put in the brig. We did a segment on Timcast IRL where I was like, this is great news. He's been released. Everybody. And Ian made a good point. He said, yeah, but that's like a headline like man stops beating his wife. And we all laugh because it's like, yeah, it's actually true. If the story starts with a negative, government does bad thing. There's no reason to celebrate when government just stops doing bad thing. We should still be angry about it. And that's where they get you. They'll say hardcore vaccine mandates. Everyone will go, rabble, rabble, rabble. Then they'll come back and say, okay, we're lowering the threshold for vaccine mandates. We're going to allow negative testing once a month. And we're going to allow, immunity testing once a month. How does that sound? And then everyone goes, once a month, that's reasonable. And then you have a mandate. And then you have to show your papers everywhere you go. So we have to remain steadfast in pushing back against all of this. Now, they're saying they want to abandon the booster shot thing, which is probably part of the big ask, in my opinion, because now people are going to be like, okay, Bill Maher was like, I'm not getting a booster. So they say, okay, that's the line. Bill Maher's already took one for the team, as he said. So he's going to be like, see there, we were right. Because they pull it as far as they can and then walk it back a little bit and people accept it. I want to show you this story I highlighted before. It needs to be shown. Just 10 violations so far under New York City's vaccine mandate for businesses. Now, there's been 21,000 inspections and 5,800 warnings. Only 10 violations so far. The warnings were because businesses didn't have signs in the window. They probably weren't even doing anything. If they had no signs in the window, I really doubt they were checking for people's papers. I hear from friends, we had Ariel Scarcella on the show, that when she's in New York, she hasn't noticed anything. She goes into businesses, no one says anything to her. No one asks for her vaccine card. New York has no ability to enforce this. So do not let the argument drift into how they get to enforce it. It should strictly be this. They've been unable to enforce it. Therefore, there's no point in even having it in place. There should be no vaccine mandate. I'll put it this way. There should be no mandates, whatever they may be. Immunity mandates or negative tests or vaccines. No one should be forced to show their papers. And New York City has clearly shown it doesn't work anyway. How do we get through this? I do not have all the answers, my friends. But I can tell you, if people are unwilling to stand up, and it seems for the most part in much of New York, they are unwilling to stand up, the end result is going to be a not so good future. And I don't know what else to tell you. If you are unwilling to stand up for what you believe in and say no, then don't be surprised when no one else is willing to stand up either, because they see no leadership. It is up to you to spread that message, to stand up and say, I will not support these moves. I'm unsurprised about Los Angeles having the worst lockdowns. Los Angeles sucks. But I don't think the establishment elites like cities very much. There is some good out of this. Some people are mad that I said that before. I said, more parents will spend time with their kids. Kids will start seeing their parents work more. But there's been a lot of suicide. A lot of young people have been developing in a world that was dramatically different. They can't handle it. These are bad things. But we need to be responsible to our families, to ourselves, to the world. And so, you know what? At the very least, just don't go to these cities. I don't know what else to say. I'll leave it there. Next segment is coming up at youtube.com/timcast at 4 p.m. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all then.